On Saturday the 31st of January 2004, a fire broke out at a care home in Uddingston near Glasgow. It was 4:28 a.m.
I got a message that our resources were attending the report of a fire in Rosepark care home in Uddingston, just outside Glasgow. I hurried myself, got dressed, jumped in the car, and then began to make my way towards the Rosepark care home. There were dozens of firefighters in breathing apparatus. There were dozens of people outside the care home in the elements. It was very cold. There was still lots of smoke around, but no big fire to be seen. It quickly became evident as I went through the front doors of the care home that there was a day room or a TV room or some kind of meeting room, and we had a large number of casualties in there. They were receiving resuscitation from a group of firefighters who were in that TV room, administering first aid and trying to make sure that we saved as many people as we could.
Soon, reports of the fire reached the news desks.
My mobile went off and I knew instantly that when the phone goes in the middle of the night, it's never good news. I heard my news editor on the other end of the phone saying, "I've already ordered you a taxi, go straight there, cameraman will meet you there." And the details were sketchy.
The thing I remember was driving up there and looking at this building and thinking, has there been a fire? Is this the right building? And all you could see was a bit of smoke damage in some of the windows and some cracked windows.
It was surreal because the building looked totally intact and I walked right round it. I mean, I've covered loads of fires and you know there's been a fire, obviously. But on this occasion, there was nothing.
When you arrive on a scene like that as a news correspondent, your first job is to start piecing things together. And you literally talk to anybody who's there who you think has a story to tell. But it slowly emerged that there were people who had died in this fire.
Later that morning, it was confirmed that 10 residents had lost their lives. Another 7 were still in hospital.
I was a junior member of the newsroom and I was working that weekend. I remember the call early that morning to say there'd been a fire, and I remember the other reporters going out. And I remember everyone being stunned at the loss of life and the number of casualties when the first reports came through.
In a fire, if you're aware of it, you would hope that you could do something to get away or to shout for help, but they didn't, they couldn't. And the fact that there were so many of them helpless really, you know, it's just heartbreaking.
As the hours went by, the figure of 10 that we'd had, which is disastrous. That was the first time I'd experienced a death toll of 10 people. But just that overwhelming sense of loss. Obviously, those that would have had loved ones in that care home, they were part of that local community, devastated, looking for answers, looking for someone to blame, which I suppose is natural.
There was a really somber mood, and as a fairly experienced news reporter, you begin to see on people's faces the impact of what's happening now. Some of these firefighters and the police, they are clearly affected by it.
We had a quick debrief outside. I got them to sit down. I took my helmet off. And what they were saying to me is, "What happened, boss? You know? How did this happen? We did everything we could. Why would 10 people? Something's not right. Something's not right."
Over the next 2 days, another 4 people would lose their lives in hospital as a result of the fire.
Everybody spoke in glowing terms of the home and the proprietors and of the care, and of how lovely it was inside and how everybody enjoyed being there. I remember that. Clearly something like that is shocking. And in the community, people would say, such a dreadful tragedy that this happened, but to Rosepark, which was clearly, a very popular place in the community, a very popular place for people to go and to visit and to see their loved ones.
There was a general sense of disbelief, both in the local and in the wider community, a sense of loss and a tremendous pressure to find out just what had gone wrong, how had this happened? And of course, many of those questions were being directed towards me. Where was the local fire station? How quickly did you get there? What did you do? How did these people die? Why didn't you save them? And those are all absolutely understandable reactions.
Immediately, an investigation got underway to find the cause of the fire. Within weeks, they had an answer.
The fire started with a spark from a faulty earth cable in an electrical distribution box, which was in a cupboard. And in close proximity to that cupboard, there were aerosols which reacted to the flame by exploding. And they blew the doors of the cupboard open, and then the fire took hold.
The number of fatalities from this comparatively small fire raised questions about the safety and management of the care home. Over the next 4 years, there were 2 attempts by the Crown Office to prosecute Thomas and Anne Balmer and their son Alan, who were the owners of the home. Both attempts resulted in no trial or finding of criminal liability. In 2009, a fatal accident inquiry was announced.
A fatal accident inquiry is not there to prosecute anyone. It's not there to attribute blame or bring about any criminal proceedings. It's really there to examine the facts of what happened, to look at any technical evidence, to look at how rescuers responded, to speak to family members who may have witnessed what happened. And it's really to bring for a sheriff or a judge, whoever leads it, to look at all that evidence and then to make a series of recommendations in the hope that there would be no repeats of this terrible incident.
The fatal accident inquiry was in a religious centre in Motherwell, and because of the size and the complexity of the event, it was too big for a court, because with 14 fatalities, you've got 14 legal representatives. With, you've got legal representatives for the care home owners, for the fire brigade.
As a token of respect to the memory of these 14 persons, I would ask all to stand and observe a minute's silence.
On the first day of a fatal accident inquiry, it's always important to remember the reason why you're there, which is why a minute's silence is held for the victims of that tragedy, and this happened in the case for Rosepark. The inquiry room falls silent as everyone remembers those who were lost. And relatives did attend the fatal accident inquiry. Many of them did give evidence. And in the first days, what we gained was a picture of life inside the home. It was made clear that for the residents, this was very much their home. Close bonds had been formed with the staff. So therefore, that made it all the more shocking that such an awful incident had happened inside a place of safety for them.
Over the next 141 days, the inquiry heard evidence from over 200 witnesses.
The fatal accident inquiry was adjudicated very much like a court would be adjudicated. I gave evidence to that inquiry over 2, perhaps 3 days. It felt quite long. It was very comprehensive, very forensic, exactly as it should be.
In April 2011, the Fatal Accident Inquiry released its report.
When you lift the lid on something and start looking in and into forensic detail into what happened, what emerged was a picture of lack of training, lack of information for staff, and while they were able to do their day-to-day duties well, they weren't able to react to an emergency, and that had awful, awful consequences for these people who died.
The main findings of the fatal accident inquiry were that the fire safety plans at the home were systematically and seriously defective. Staff weren't properly trained, there was few fire drills, the electricity system at the home hadn't been properly maintained. In a nutshell, management had failed to consider the worst case scenario, and that was a fire breaking out at night.
The sheriff said that had there been a plan and better training, it may well not have happened. Had there been a situation where people knew what to do, it may well not have happened. It was the plan not to phone the fire brigade straight away when the fire alarm went off, but to go and look for the fire. That took 9 minutes to find the fire. And yes, of course, they phoned the fire brigade. It took another 4 minutes for the fire brigade to get in because they went to the wrong part of the home. So that's 13 minutes elapsed from the discovery of the fire to the fire brigade coming.
When we read the findings of this inquiry, it was quite numbing because this was a very, very small fire. It happened in a cupboard and really shouldn't have had the consequences it did. But as we know with fires, the killer is very often the smoke, and that's what happened here.
I know there was a very large investigation report produced, I think, ran to around 700 or 800 pages. I recall reading it on several occasions so that we could see the bits that were relevant to us, the bits that were relevant to the care home owners and the staff, and the bits that were relevant to the health boards, and just so that we could get any lessons that we could learn from it. And so I think in every sense it was a learning experience.
In 2018, the Balmers sold the Rosepark care home to a larger care group.
What I will never forget was seeing the hearses come out of that care home, one after another, with those old people. And it's just, just so sad to live a long life and to pass away like that. And I've been to loads of tragedies and fires and crime scenes and disasters and train crashes and plane crashes, but to see vulnerable old people like that, I'll never forget that.